Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's edition of the Triangle Area SQL Server User Group's Data Science and Business Intelligence meeting. So this is our March meeting, final meeting of the month for us, save for an episode of Shop Talk that's going to happen on Monday. We have with us Anthony Adeleke. I didn't think I would mess up the first name, but apparently I messed up. I was jumping at the gun there, but Anthony is going to talk to us about what if scenarios in Power BI. So please take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I'm really happy to be here, and hopefully you come away with learning something new and cool through this experience. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the process of sort of replicating this sheet that we have here. What you have here is this position is going to be very heavy on the BI part of things, and essentially what I'm going to have walk you guys through is how to a scenario where you're trying to run a budget and the budget is based on three labor categories that you're hiring, all with different labor rates. And what you're doing is affecting or essentially changing the different labor, the number of hours to help you arrive at your total labor costs. This could be in my line of work, I work in government contracts. Over the last 3 years, I've started to move more towards like the analytics part, and some of you will be pretty happy to know that your federal government really is very interested in moving towards the analytics, and it's something has been very good for my skill set anyway. But what I'm trying to show you guys is during the government procurement process, there's something called an independent government cost estimate. So every time the government wants to buy something, they actually have to do some sort of independent cost estimate, right? And what I'm going to walk you through is a scenario where I want you guys to imagine that you're actually a government official who, has a budget, and try to imagine the government actually having a budget, but this person actually has a budget, and he's trying to determine how far his budget will take him based on the number of hours that his staff has worked. For the sake of this scenario, I made it pretty simple. There's just three labor categories: a data analyst, a data scientist, and a program manager, and they all have different labor rates. You see, if I click on this, it isolates and shows me the cost for the program manager. So So you can see now, if I change the hours associated with each of these labor categories, my labor costs change as well. Make sure nothing's stuck here. So you see, if I reduce my program manager hours to only 424, my total labor cost changes. And if I increase my data analyst hours to the maximum, it changes as well. So I'm going to walk you guys through this whole process of how to create a what if scenario around budgeting. Obviously, what if scenarios in Power BI can be applied for many different scenarios, but I'm just going to choose this one. Okay. So I am going to beautifully hit the save and close this one. Then I'm going to open up a fresh Power BI template. Excuse me while I play the Jeopardy sound in the back. Okay. Microsoft Excel and Power BI are opening up simultaneously because those are going to be our data sources. Okay. All right, so this is a relatively easy, simple data source, right? It has two tabs, and under each tab, it has the job series and the hourly rate, tells all the information, the program manager, data analyst, and data scientist roles, and then the associated labor rates. And in this case, we're going to actually assume there's a budget, okay? I've set the budget at $500,000, but let's have a little bit of fun. Let's go to 700,000. Seven's my lucky number, so let's see how that goes. Okay, we have a budget of $700,000, and we're trying to hire these three labor categories. We've done market research and showed this is what the going rate is for this type of labor position, the skill set that we need. And we're going to see how far the $700,000 will get us on the based on the number of hours that these people are working. The variable in this scenario is going to be the hours. The rate is there. We just need to figure out what hours, how far the hours will take us. Okay, so I'm going to hit save, close that. Now we're going to go to the blank canvas. Okay, voila, you have a new Power BI desktop. And Excel would probably be the most common place to get data from. There are tons of other ways you can import data into the Power BI. Those of you familiar with Tableau, it's much the same way. I'll show you what some of those examples are, just so you can get a sample of the power of Power BI, pun intended. So you see, you can have an Excel, a text CSV, an XML file, a JSON file, a PDF. You can have an Amazon Redshift for those of you who are in that world. SAP. You could all the way to Dynamics. SharePoint lists is actually one of my favorite. I actually like a lot when you can do the Power BI to SharePoint integration. All the way to, I think you can do Salesforce. I'm pretty sure there's a Salesforce plugin here. SurveyMonkey. So lots of different options, but I just want you to know that for right now, we're using Excel, okay? So I'm just gonna click import data from Excel. Very conveniently, the file that we're referencing, the independent government cost estimate document is pulled up. So I'm just gonna hit open and export my data into Power BI. The first few moments when you're importing your data can take a little bit of time. But here it gives me two options, and it shows my document name and the two tabs. There's the labor rate and there's the and total budget. I'm just gonna hit load. Sometimes if you have very complex data and you want Power BI to and you want to go to clean the data, you can hit transform data. But for the sake of this presentation, it's pretty simple information that we're loading. So I'm just gonna hit the load icon. And I'm going to hit apply changes. Relationships. If you have a very big data set, Power BI usually does a good job of sort of detecting what the relationships could be based on some of the headings. But we have a pretty simple data set right now. So okay, I'm going to hit apply changes and make sure that all the changes are accepted. Give me a moment. Okay. So there are two tabs here. One tab is the hourly rate, and Power BI puts this sigma sign here. It basically means that it's summed it up for you. That could be something you might want to change at a later time, but for this, it doesn't affect this presentation. So I'm going to put, so here, Power BI has given me the hourly rate by jobs. Power BI is, like most BI tools, tries to be intuitive about how to best display your information. Right now, Power BI believes that a bar chart is the best way to display my information. It says hourly rate by job series as data scientist, program manager, job and data analyst. Just for the sake, for the sake of this presentation, I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger, just so make the data labels a little bit bigger. I'm gonna change this to 20 font. Okay, and I'm gonna change the hourly rate to a $sign and format it. Okay, so you see that, and I don't know if a bar chart is really the best way to display this information. I'm gonna have a multi-row card and change it here so I can see very succinctly what the hourly rates are. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger for everybody. I'm gonna make that 20 fonts. data labels, and I'm going to make the card title also 20 fonts. And the category, I'm going to change that to 20 fonts as well. So hopefully everybody should be able to see this very well. Okay, you have the data analyst, and we just have that as a reference point. Okay, so now the fun part. Wait, one more thing I want to do. I want to put a border around this so we can see it a little bit more clearly. Okay, now the fun part starts. Okay, Power BI, under the modeling tab, you can do this thing called a parameter. A parameter, it gives a very good explanation. It says, what are parameters let you see how your data behaves under different conditions and reports them in slices or reference them in other DAX expressions. I'm going to walk you guys through DAX. DAX is the language that's used in Power BI, which stands for data analysis expressions. For those of you who are familiar with Excel, some people say it's very similar in terms of logic to Excel. I think it's a little bit different, but it is becoming more intuitive to me as I've worked with it. So what I'm going to do now is create 3 parameters, because the parameters what we need to figure out is how the hours these people work is going to affect our total cost, right? I'm going to make one parameter. I'm going to call this data analyst cost. All right. There's a series. There are different options for what kind of data type you can put in there. I'm going to put a whole number, and it gives you a maximum and a minimum and a maximum requirement. Pro tip here: try to make the minimum and maximum as realistic as possible. I've learned the hard way. Like for example, let's say you're trying to hire an executive, right? A tech executive of your company, and the salary is going to be the maximum your company can pay is $450,000. You would not want to set the minimum at 0, because you're not going to pay anybody $0. You know, for somebody in that category, maybe the maximum is 450. The minimum you might want to pay somebody of that caliber is probably around 350. So you would want to set it as close to as realistic as possible, not 0 to the highest number that you can think of, because that will really throw things off. So in this case, my minimum, I'm going to assume in this scenario that you want the person to work at least 2 weeks, right? So I'm going to give them 2 weeks. That's a bare minimum. You could even make it 160. Okay, let's give them a month. That each labor category is going to work at least 1 month, and then the maximum number of hours they can work, I'm going to assume 20, 80. That's the number a lot of government contracts use. And I'm going to go up in increments of, let's say, 40. So 1 month and then a week, weekly after that. And the default is going to be 40. I'm going to do this. And all right, so now I have a nice little slicer over here that shows me the data analyst cost. And if I toggle this, it gives me default. I'm going to blow this up and format it up a little bit. Numeric inputs, it's not going to be 9. I'm going to make everything 20. 20 is my default number today. Slicer header, make that 20 as well. All right. Everybody should be able to see this, and I'm going to give it a nice little colorful background. Let's go with, I don't know, is this plum? Whatever this is, something like this. Okay, let's go with this. It's 160. This is my data analyst cost. So I'm basically just going to go ahead and repeat the exact same thing for the other 2 labor categories. I'm going to call this data scientist. A little bit of lag here. Excuse me. Yes. I did a scientist cost. I'm going to make this a whole number. And the same scenario, I'm going to make this 80, a maximum of 2080. And it's going to go up in increments of 40. Make my default. Actually, I'm going to give them a minimum of 160. That's what we decided was going to be the minimum, right? Give everybody at least 1 month.
Okay, Kevin.
Yes, we have audio. So where
I tested my audio and everything. I think this is a conspiracy by Zoom.
it could be. Whereby usually doesn't freak out like that, but it did tonight. Fortunately, though, we had backup plan Delta. So
Great. Okay, so you want me to stop to go where I left off?
sure. Let's pick it
Okay.
up right where we left off.
And I actually did hear a question. Somebody was asking, can you copy this instead of having to create one? The answer is not really, because if you need to be able to create like individual slicers. And let me show you what would happen if I try to copy it. If I hit copy visual, and then I hit Control V. So I've replicated my the shape, but it's still referencing one. And hold on a second. If I go
Here,
here.
I'm gonna make you a
you hear me?
co-host, so that way you're able to share screen.
Oh shoot, let me share my screen. My apologies. I thought you guys were in my living room, since I hear you. So this is actually, I'm in my guest bedroom. So I thought you guys were in my house. So yeah, what I did was I just basically, someone asked if I could copy this. No, it wouldn't work because you see here, I have copied it, but I've copied the visual, but and this is sort of like the back guts of Power BI of your data set. It still is only created one, it's only still only referencing one series. Okay, so yeah, it's best if you just go ahead and create a new parameter. So I'm gonna go back to modeling and hit new parameter. Wait, I need to go back and change this. Well, you see that some of the things I did will make it a little bit easier to identify and change the different parameters. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back to hit modeling. I don't want to hit that parameter. I'm going to go to data scientist cost. And we talked about making this a minimum of 80 hours. Oh, no, 160, which is a month. Going up to 80 hours. And it's going to go up in increments of 40, which is a week. And the default is 40 as well. So I'm going to just do this. And much like Word or Excel, I'm just going to format paint it and change it. So now it looks very similar to that. I'm just going to do the exact same thing and create another parameter. Modeling, new parameter. I'm going to call this program manager. Anything 80 hours, 2080, going up in increments of 40 with a default of 80. I think I might have messed up there, but you guys must get the general gist. Okay, so let me go back and see what I put for Yeah, that needs to be a default of 80 for the um, data analyst. Hit delete. Go back. So Rick isn't ready for the zombie apocalypse, huh? We've got to figure that out. All that running you're doing, Rick.
Yep. Step 1, cardio. Step 2, double tap.
All right. So here we have it. Now we see we've created these 3 sliders. All right. And as you see, they move up and down. What did I do with this data science? I can see. Okay, it's 160. I put. So the data science is going to work a minimum of 160 hours. Same with the data analyst, and the program manager would make that number. Excuse the dog in the background. 80. Okay. So as you can see, these are moving, but you don't really see anything changing. That's because we haven't done what's called a measure. A measure, for those of you who don't know, is essentially an equation that you put in Excel, in Power BI. In Excel, you call it an equation. Here, they're called measures. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and create a measure that attaches this slider here to the data analyst costs. And also you're remembering that we do have a total budget we have to worry about, right? So we have a total budget that we have to worry about. I'm gonna make sure that we reference that so we know that we do have to pay attention to this. And I'll also show you how we can make an interlay with that and create an interaction with these costs and the overall total budget that we're worried about. Okay, so I'm gonna walk you guys through the process of making a measure. Here, when you under the Home tab, you just go to New Measure. Sorry, let me make sure I'm gonna hit a New Measure, and I want to start off with the data analyst salary cost computations. For the sake of time, I'd already put this together, but I'll show you, for those of you who are familiar with Excel, this calculates sum. It's sort of, let me make this a little bit bigger for you. It sort of works like a VLOOKUP. There, like in Excel, much like in Excel, there are lots of ways you can do a VLOOKUP or get the same result. Either use index, use match. There are other ways you can probably get the same information, but here I used what's called a calculate sum. So it says data analyst costs is equals to calculate the sum, in parentheses, the sum of the labor rates hourly rate, which is listed here, and then you look up the job series, and if the job series is data analyst, which is $89 an hour, multiply by the data analyst cost value. Okay, so that measure has been created. Here, I'm going to go back to it. All right, this is my first measure. And I'm gonna put it here. And I'm gonna transform this, instead of bar chart, I'm going to transfer it into a card. All right, and let me just go ahead and format that so that it comes a little bit cleaner. You know, it has a dollar sign in front of it and gives you a rough a general number. And let me just go ahead and change this. Okay, so it tells me that my data analyst cost is $4,720. And for the sake of this, let me put a bit of a different color in the background just so it has a bit of a contrast. I'll go with some sort of like golden hue or something like that. Okay. So you see now, at least you know what your data analyst cost is. And if you move this slider here, your costs increase. All right. And then this is a situation where, going back to the question about copying and paste, it's actually a situation where you actually could copy and paste. So when you go to the new measure, what you do is you can go back to the formula for the data analyst cost, and then just Control C, new measure, Control V. But instead of the data analyst, we're looking for the data scientist. And then I'm just going to change these data points to SCIE, and then data scientist cost. Okay. Perfect. And if I hit that, it gives me the data scientist costs. Okay, the formatting, paste it here, and change that to a card. So, and also go in currency, and under this little format thing, this little roll of paint roller thing that's actually for the formatting, I'm just going to change the data label so that it matches the one up top. And you see now we have $32,000. And the data scientist costs, if I change this, it moves it up as well. So now it changes the data scientist cost based on the inputs that I put in the slider. Okay. So now I'm just going to do the last measure and do the program manager cost. All right, and change these to basically, again, using the Excel syntax, it's if this is program manager, give me the cost, and I'm hitting the program manager value, which Power BI already recognized because of these, like, I call them the squiggly brackets, the square brackets. You put the square brackets around them, and then Power BI helps you recognize what the values are. Okay. And I am going to make this a card, do the formatting so that it matches. And so all right, so as you can see, let me go to the background to make sure that this is done properly. Click on that, and then now it's a dollar sign just like the other ones. So now you have the program manager costs a minimum of 80 hours. And if I slide these, let's assume let's make an assumption that everybody's gonna work full time, right? just blast everybody's hours. So let's see what the total of all these actually equals. So I'm going to create another measure. I'm going to show you a way to cheat well, not cheat, but it's the way that makes things a little bit easier in Power BI. There's a measure, but there's also something called a quick measure, and it can help you get familiar with the syntax of DAX. Okay, so basically, what you're trying to decide is what is this budget minus the sum of these three. So, and if you're new to Power BI, you may be wondering, how do I put that in? So you go to quick measure, and then it asks you for, Power BI asks you for what kind of calculations you want to create. In this case, we want to make a subtraction, right? So what we're trying to do is subtract the total budget. And I find that sometimes it's helpful to just put in one variable of what it is that you're trying to, get the whatever like equation you're trying to solve. So that's even if you have like a multi-layered equation. If you just put in x minus that, it will show you what the syntax would look like. So in this case, let's look at the let's go to the program manager costs. Okay. And I'm going to call this budget over under. All right. And another thing too about Power BI, this is very useful for how organizing your data. You see now that all these measures are put under the data analyst cost. Well, I don't really want the program manager cost put under there. So what I'm going to do is I can change the home table where it's located. I'm going to change that to the program manager, and you see now it's now moved from the data analyst cost to the program manager location. It usually tends to default to the first measure that you have up there. So it's coming up on you to make sure to check how the measures, where the measures are being located. Okay, so in this case, I have the created the budget over under. Put that right there. Okay, and I don't want it to be there as well. Let's put that into the total budget. Okay, so if I am just looking at the total budget compared to the program manager's salary, sorry about that. I'm $388,000 under budget, but you're not just hiring a program manager, you're hiring a program manager, a data scientist, and a cost analyst. So I'm going to go back to my formula, to my measure, and I'm going to put this in parentheses and say sum, data analyst cost. Actually, or maybe I just do this. I'll say data manager's cost plus square brackets data analyst cost plus data scientist cost. Put this in parentheses. And you see now, it gives me a very different financial picture that I am way over budget. And, now I have to decide, like, what are my constraints that I have to work with? Obviously, I can't hire everybody full time. So you have to start thinking, okay, what is the position that I really need? Maybe the data analyst, most junior person, you want that person to be full time, but you don't, this data scientist, more experienced, more knowledgeable, $200 an hour, that's expensive. Let's try to see if we can go with somebody, half-time, around about 1080. And let's see, well, you're still a little bit over budget. And do you need a program manager all the time on this project? Maybe you can go down a little bit. Let's say down to 1800. Let's see what that does to our costs. Now you're over budget. So this is a very simple and quick way to be able to go in and create some different what if scenarios and help, and especially in the context of trying to figure out your financial costs. I thank you guys for really being patient with me through this, through some of the tech issues, but this is a very quick and dirty way to show you how to do some what if scenarios in Power BI, which is an amazing tool and can be very powerful in helping you to do some of these very quick what if scenarios. With that being said, I'm gonna open this up. I'm gonna, does anybody have any questions?
So if you have questions for Anthony, drop them in chat. We'll forward them along. Usually there's about a 20-second stream delay, meaning that they'll hear us about 20 seconds afterward. So generally I try to vamp for 20 seconds or so to give people a chance to type away. While they're doing that, this looks like a pretty classic linear constraints problem, where if I say I want to hit this budget, I need to stay within constraints here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if there's a way within Power BI to emulate that sort of constraint where don't let me go under 0, so control the sliders so that I can't go negative?
Yes, I could do that. I could get more complex and put in like an if statement. If something happens, then give me a goose egg or something. Say, hey, we're budget, you can't move on. Such that, yeah. So I could do that and just basically put an if statement. If this is above $700,000, it would give me, whatever message or whatever kind of warning you would want somebody to see. So yes, short answer is yes, that is possible.
Cool. Mark asks, similarly, is there a solver function within Power BI like there is in Excel?
Good. I would imagine there is. I've never had a chance to use it or a need to use it, but I would think that there's a. I'd always guess and say that you wouldn't even need it because of some of the tools and power that Power BI has. But and sorry, I keep saying power and Power BI, but I don't think you would need it, but I'm quite certain. I'm almost willing to bet my house on it that you could replicate that same function.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Like at the very worst, you may have to implement some of the functionality, like writing some DAX functions, or it probably would be DAX. It wouldn't be M for that case, but yeah.
Yeah. So let's. That's actually a good question. How many people here understand the difference between Power BI and Power Query? And because it seems like you do, Kevin, understand that M is the language that's used by Power Query and DAX is one that's used by Power BI Desktop.
Yeah, chat, what do you say? How versed are you on query versus BI? So Mike says yes. Looks like we're getting some yeses that people do understand that there is a difference between them.
Yeah, I'm telling you this because I had a scenario where I was trying to convince one of my clients had a very complicated, he had a lot of data, and that is trying to go into a cost model, and I was trying to convince my client that he needed to be open to using Power Query to create some of these different scenarios because I thought it was just a little bit more powerful to be able to cleanse the data, but the client was more familiar with Power BI Desktop. and it sort of takes an education process to let people understand what the differences are and when you should use both. DAX is very cool. It does all the flashy stuff, I think. But I think if you have a lot of data and a lot of data cleansing you need to do, it's best to do it in Power Query using M. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Our Necrosoft asks, can you visualize the solution or visualize different scenarios?
You certainly can. How would you, it all depends on how you'd want. I mean, right now everything is pretty simple. We're using a card, but there are different scenario visualizations we could have used. We could have put all of these in some sort of bar chart. So let's do this. Let's create a bar chart with this has the data analyst cost in it, but I also want to include the program manager costs, and I also want to include the data scientist costs. Okay, so, and I'm assuming this is what you mean. As you change each of these inputs, you can dynamically see the charts changing. So
Yeah, and another way that might make sense here possibly could be a stacked area chart.
Yep.
I don't know if you'd need multiple points on the x-axis, but basically doing a comparison versus that budget, or a stacked column chart. Yeah, because that's kind of boring.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. There are many ways you could do it. You could always go for the dreaded, donut holes and pie charts. Apparently, pie charts have a bad reputation in the data visualization world. I tend to like pie charts, but that's other ways you could do it. So it gives you a plethora of options to visualize your data. And these are just the standard that it comes with, but you can also go into the background and get more visuals from the Power BI, marketplace, where a lot of people, some developers create their own visualizations to better meet your needs.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about back to linear constraint days. I mean, you might even use your table that you generated in Power Query, the generate series, and plot those as lines, and then plot the budget and basically use that as your stacked area, so that you could see that as this thing grows, budget grows, and try to get combinations and see where you hit that 700K line. It would get a little complex to like draw that out. I think you'd have to massage the data set a little bit, but
yeah. So one thing I could do is create a constant line. So I could add a constant line here, and I make that value. Let's go in this case 700,000. Is that 712? Okay, so and I could make this stacked column chart. So you see now I am based on this. I now have my constant line. It tells me it's at 700,000. So if I start changing my inputs, if I reduce the program manager salary, you keep seeing that it meets. So play with it to make sure. Yep, it seems like that is like my sweet spot there, or maybe just a little bit below, just to make sure, and I could put in the data labels here so I can know exactly what it is. But yes, there is a way to be able to, you know, stack up your constraints essentially. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So that's some good ways to think about how you might visualize this.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, chat? And Mark has a follow-up on the solver thing. The answer is there doesn't appear to be an optimization solver built into Power BI, but there are third-party tools and examples of writing things on your own. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What I thought.
Solver is it's a reasonably complex tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think I've used Solver since I had my MBA in a classroom. So I don't think I've actually had a real life scenario where I've used Solver.
Yeah, I've known accountants who lived in Solver that was their life. You can use R within Power BI, absolutely. Yeah, R and Python.
100%. Yep. R and Python are both here. I haven't had the opportunity to use either, but they're definitely. Am I still sharing my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there are two options for R and Python visuals here. So, yeah.
Yeah, those are there. With the caveat that you don't get quite as much nicety with, say, cross filtering or some of the functionality of native components. But if you need R for something, it's definitely there. Mike's takeaway: data science, big dollars. Seems legit.
Yeah. Very big dollars.
Orange bar go burr. That's probably the last time I'm ever going to use that meme on video. In person, we'll see. Okay, any other questions for Anthony from chat? Mike says we really appreciate your time, which is absolutely true. It's not a question, but it is true.
And I really appreciate your patience with all my tech issues. My deep apologies. It's it wouldn't be a Zoom meeting if we didn't have tech issues, right? So we got the full 360 of the pandemic.
That's very true. Okay, so looks like that may be all the questions we've got.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It's really been a pleasure, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to do this.
Absolutely. We appreciate you coming in, showing off what if calculations, showing off some of the functionality that you can do with Power BI. And with that, we're going to call it an evening. So thank you again, everybody, for checking in, for sticking around as we figured out what was going on with video issues, and we'll see you again next time.
All right. Take care. Bye.